this GEG Global event. We'll be getting started shortly. In the meantime, head over to the chat section and connect with other educators by introducing yourself. Share where you're from, what you do in education, and even your Twitter handle. And if you have any questions right away, go ahead and ask them there. And don't forget to click the subscribe button so you receive updates on any GEG Global events. Stay tuned. We'll get started shortly.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, everybody. We are so glad you are here. I'm Laura Stevens at Stevens STEM. I'm the one that you usually see pushing out all the questions on Sunday night. And our panel today, we have three amazing individuals with us. First, we have our author, Emma Pass. She is a hybrid teacher full-time out of Colorado. She's the one that we're all bowing to get all of our information as we enter this new adventure. And then up above her, we have the one and only Stuart Rogers that has stayed up until the all hours of the night in UK. Say hi, Stuart.
Hello.
And then below me, we have Sean. Sean is an educator in Northern Illinois, even with all his Cubs gear. He is a tech coordinator for a Catholic high school. Hi, Sean. Thank you for coming tonight.
Hi, guys.
So our format for tonight, guys, we have the panel. We are going to go through the questions that we went through every week so far and get some feedback from real individuals, a little bit deeper, more discussion, and then take some questions from you guys and maybe even a little preview of what's coming with asynchronous learning on Sunday. So you guys ready to get started?
Go for it.
So you guys just jump in as to who has what question, whatever you guys think. Give us your feedback. You guys are the experts. They're all Google trainers, couple Google innovators among us, and way more experience and know-how than I have. They just allow me to tag along. So let's get the first question going here. Let me share my screen. Share screen. Application. All right, see if I got that right. So everybody got that one?
Yep.
All right. So our first question that we talked about is the difference between hybrid and blended learning. Thinking about what different terms are being used in your district and what's your favorite learning tool. So who wants to throw something out with that?
I guess I can start, as I do start the survival guide with teaching terms. I'm an English teacher, obviously, so that's a big practice of mine is to pre-teach vocabulary. I didn't know what hybrid learning was before I applied for my job at the hybrid school, which is such a surreal experience right now because I think a lot of people had that experience too, right? A year or so ago, nobody knew what hybrid learning was, and now most teachers are preparing for hybrid learning in some sense. So I didn't know the difference between a lot of those terms, hybrid, blended, synchronous, asynchronous. I actually had somebody question me on the difference between hybrid and blended learning. She claimed that they were synonymous terms. I don't know. I think we're really in an evolution of tech right now, and we're still kind of defining these terms as they go. But what I write in the book is as I understand them.
Awesome. Sean, do you have a favorite tool?
Yeah, because I was going to say, I know blended learning, from my understanding of it, is quite a bit different than what we're talking about with hybrid. I think there's a lot more. I don't want to say a lot more to it, but yeah, I've looked into it, and I know I'm not an expert on the blended. I'm hoping to be a say I'm an expert in hybrid because I'm leading the charge here. So I think probably my favorite tool overall is I don't want to cheat and just say Google Suite because it's got everything in there for us. But it does have everything in there for us. There's so many tools, and with the menus being so similar, it's so easy for students of all ages to go from one program to the next. They're going to find the same things in the same menus almost on those tools. And then after that, I would just have to say what Zoom has done for education across the board is fantastic.
What do you think, Stuart? Do you see the same things over in the UK?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, you know, we've gone from never hearing about these terms asynchronous and synchronous to now rolling them out every 5 minutes when we're talking to staff and so on. You know, we don't have a hybrid learning model in the UK, as far as I'm aware. It's very different, but I'm quite excited about it in terms of using it as a wish, if you like, for our school. But it's certainly new, and I think, you know, all staff now are very aware of the difference, certainly between asynchronous and synchronous. And in terms of learning tool, I've gone from having never heard of Jamboard to now it being my absolute favorite in terms of using it for everything and anything, and even help me come up with my innovator idea. So yeah, go for it.
Very cool. All right, let's see what we got. What concerns do you have about access and equity within your school district? How is your district addressing the issues? And what is your plan if you notice these issues in your classroom? I know this one's near and dear to my heart because I teach in a rural community, and my previous district was basically inner city. So I know the inequities are there. What do you guys see in your areas?
Yeah, I'll go first on it because mine's going to be a pretty simple answer. We're in a private high school where all the kids have iPads, but that doesn't mean equity across the board when they go home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big issue. And when we're doing the synchronous learning, a lot of the teachers had a real struggle with, well, so-and-so is not at a table. They're not sitting up at a, you know, in a certain space where they should be. And that kid doesn't have that space because they live in a, you know, 2-bedroom apartment and there's 4 people living there and they're all working online. Like there isn't that space to do that. So for us, it's simple in a way that they, you know, it's not as bad as a lot of places have, but I would say just getting that across to the teachers over and over. They're doing the best they can. We have to be more lenient with what they're doing. They're not doing it just to irritate you, or they don't want to do it. This is all they have. And getting that across, just because we're private school doesn't mean every kid's rolling up in a, you know, in a Benz, right? So yeah.
I understand we're 1-to-1, but once they leave, with being rural, we don't have the internet connections. We have families that were driving and sitting in our parking lots to get the internet connection. So I get you there. What do you guys see, Stuart, Emma?
I mean, Emma will know about this as well, having taught in the UK, but there's huge differences where we are. You know, we're a fairly affluent catchment area, but we have massive disparity in terms of access. You know, we have some very large families, so even if they do have a device, they don't necessarily have a device each, which makes it very difficult. And I know, for example, in inner city Leeds, there's a very popular primary school there. Head teacher there is very high profile on Twitter, and yet his school only have 15% digital access at home. So his school have done very little in terms of any online learning, and you can't blame him really. So, you know, there's a massive issue. And all of these new teaching techniques are great, but if they can't actually access anything, then it's very difficult. So it's a priority for us. You know, you guys are going back to school already. We've got 5 weeks, and my priority as our digital learning lead is to try and address this issue in terms of not having access to devices.
Yeah, I very much start the book trying to address this issue because like Stuart just said, there's so much we can do in online and hybrid learning, but if we don't have the access, then all of those people are left out of those kind of amazing opportunities. I could probably write an entire book about equity and access, and there's so much to dive into. But another thing I appreciate Sean saying is that just having the device isn't necessarily enough. I have a lot of students who maybe you give a device to, they go home and that's the only device in the household. So that device then becomes shared amongst siblings, amongst parents. Bandwidth is another huge issue. We've got families at my school that have 11 siblings who are all trying to do online school. They have to portion out bandwidth time during the day because you just can't accommodate that many people. So just so much here in equity and access. And I think it's probably a concern in every school, in every district around the country, for sure. Of course, again, in the resource, I talk about a couple potential solutions. Number one, we all need to be advocating for better funding, just period, because it's kind of insane in 2020 that we don't have this sort of equity and access. It's possible and we don't. And then two, trying to kind of try and address the needs in this moment. Hotspots, programs like Neverwhere that can repurpose old devices, and offline documents, I think, are a good place to start.
Yeah.
So in the UK, our government basically a little bit late put a load of funding forward in order to get digital devices to families that didn't have them. But they started that at the end of March, and no physical devices actually turned up until probably mid-June. So it's a bit late, but they were trying. But yeah, funding is a massive issue.
Okay, I was just going to pop over and see if there were any questions that we needed to address right away. Dana, did you see anything we needed to address right away? All right.
No, but I'll keep you posted if they come up.
Thank you. All right, so let me get back over to question 3. Question 3 is when we started talking about curriculum and expectations and how work was going to be released and all basically the nuts and bolts. By now I know I go back the 25th with kiddos, and personally, we don't have a lot of that. We are still planning on going back face to face. So the idea is everything's going to be like normal. What are you guys telling your teachers, Stuart or Sean?
So we're definitely going hybrid. Email went out actually just a couple hours ago to the parents to let us know what their plans are. We are accommodating families. They can't, whatever. They don't want to send their students back in that environment because they're taking care of elderly parents. They can't have it themselves, whatever it is. So that option's there. And then I think the best plan, it was great because we had our teachers very involved in this process, and we were kind of hung up on the alternating days and all those kind of things. And one of the teachers in one of our final meetings said, why don't we just alternate Fridays? Because we're concerned about consistency for parents. Like, how do you plan for Monday, Wednesday, Friday one week and Tuesday, Thursday the next week, and then keep switching back and forth? So we're going, we split in Spartan and a Veritas group, just key terms in our school. So we're going to go Monday, Wednesday with one group and Tuesday, Thursday with the other. They're going to stay on those days. And then we're just going to alternate Fridays to give them their 5th day. So we're not going to do a full e-learning day. So in 10 days, you're going to be in school 5. And if there's nowhere for you to take your child, we're going to provide space in the school. They're not going to keep going to their classes because we got to keep that balance, but they're going to stay in one room. We'll use 2 rooms if we have to, but they'll be there. They'll do their e-learning in that room. So we're going to accommodate for those parents too that need them in the building. And if they got to stay home, they got to stay home. Like, they're going to be able to be in class because we'll broadcasting, we'll be doing a Zoom meeting in every classroom. So you're in class. It's not just in class and then doing whatever at home on your own. You're actually in class all 10 days.
Yeah. Stuart, have they talked to you guys about anything, or have you guys come up with a plan?
Yeah, we're in a different situation to you guys because you unfortunately appear to be in a worse situation. So we've just broken for the summer. And we start back at the first week in September. So at the moment, we are all in as usual, all children in. We've got social distancing in place, but for us, it's no different to a normal start of the school year. However, our infections are rising. There's a number of local lockdowns, not very far away from me, actually. So for us, it's going to be normal. But, you know, we're 5 weeks away from the start of the school year, where some of you obviously have already started. So my heart does go out to you guys, because I know a lot of districts and superintendents are making decisions and they're not necessarily the wisest of decisions either. But I won't get too political.
Emma, do you have anything further to explain? Like how I loved how your guys' was set up. It was logical.
Well, so the examples I give in the book of my hybrid school are actually going to have to be adapted right now to accommodate class sizes. So last Sunday in our Twitter chat, or the Sunday before, the question came up and I had to give a shrugging emoji because I still didn't know. But one of my colleagues said today that she appreciates our district really taking their time and being intentional with their decisions. So we got our email on Monday. Our school is delaying start for a week, student start. So we're going to have an additional week of teacher PD, which I think is really necessary to help teachers prepare for what the fall will look like. Then the first 3 weeks, we're starting half days only with students on campus in a hybrid model. So we have alternating A-B groups. We'll have an A group Monday, Wednesday, a B group Tuesday, Thursday, and then Fridays are always all students remote asynchronous learning so that teachers can have additional plan time. So the first few weeks are half days only. I think just kind of as we start to get into the rhythm of things, and also to make sure we're cleaning and sanitizing as we need to. And then secondary will go full day hybrid from there. Elementary is planning to go back full time after that. And these are just kind of tentative plans. And it seems like we're going to take it as we go. I see Dana's question at the bottom. How many students do you usually have in your classes and how many sections? So my particular hybrid school is in England, we call it a single form entry. And some of my terms, Stuart, from the UK, just like can't shake. It's like I've just adopted them. I say maths a lot
Nothing
now,
wrong with that.
which I never thought I would. But so in the UK, we'd call it single form entry. We have one class per grade. So I teach 7th, 8th, and then last year I taught 9th grade as well. So I have 3 classes, and then those classes range, you know, just as an average class size, somewhere between 25, 26, 30 kids per class.
I know, like in mine, I have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but I actually have 2 sections of each grade. And my classes can range anywhere from about 18 to 28. And my concern, you know, I was very envious with what Stuart said, that it's set up for social distancing within the classroom. There will not be any social distancing in the majority of our classrooms, especially in mine, because we have tables. I run a STEM lab. There's just not the physical space to social distance when you put 26 kids in a classroom. So I'm
so sorry, Laura. What we're doing is we're working in bubbles. So I have to socially distance as a teacher. So all adults have to socially distance in school from children. And we are working in bubbles within our year group. So I teach year 6, which I think is grade 5 US. So we're in a bubble of 90, and we are restricting the movement of children around school. And we have different lesson periods so that we don't interact with other year groups. And then in theory, if somebody comes down with COVID, then that entire bubble then goes into isolation at home, but the rest of the school still functions.
Makes sense. How are you guys handling it, Sean?
Yeah, just like I said, the alternating days and then Fridays will be also alternating. It's going to keep it so that there's consistency for our parents. That's the biggest thing we wanted. Um, and I'm trying to think of what else, is kind of big with that. Um, yeah, like I said, our teachers, we had multiple meetings with a core group of people that volunteered. They wanted to be part of the process. And I think that's just huge because some of these plans coming out that we're hearing of are like, where were the teachers involved in this? Like they have, I got one school that wants to change, into doing more project-based learning. Like that's, I don't want to bash people's plans, but, and I know project-based learning is a good idea, but to change now, between now and August, I don't know how you're going to accomplish that well. I totally get it. Like, I would love to see more project-based learning in my own school, but now's a very difficult time to put anything else on your teachers too. So there's a real balance there, and I'm just wondering why more schools didn't involve their teachers. That's a big concern of mine.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that you
would,
guys did that.
I would second that. It's kind of been concerning. I agree that the teachers are not involved in a lot of the conversation. Although as I was listening to Sean talk, I was like, oh, I would be psyched to just throw up the plans and be like, project-based learning. Yes, let's do it. But if people are driving that, then no.
Yeah, and we're giving our teachers the flexibility. Like, you want to do, we're kind of built for a little bit more of a synchronous plan. But if you're going, I mean, like in the book, you can switch that up. Like, we're trying to get that across to them. Look, you can do what you need to do, but to blanket statement to the whole school, we're all going to change that scares me to death. Like that.
I agree. I'm a big fan of letting teachers be the expert in their classroom. And if they want to do project-based learning, let them do project-based learning. And if they want to do synchronous learning, let them do synchronous learning, right? We are professionals.
Right. And then to know that who's doing what within your building, and to get those people somehow, sometime, because we're not going to be around each other enough, and so to know who's doing it and to help those people build support systems, I think is going to be really big, because people are going to try new things, whether they want to or they have to. So how do you support them? And I think number one is you have to know who's doing what in your building, and you got to put those people together, and you got to help, and then connect them with people like you guys here, like the PLN on Twitter, the people that aren't there. We have to get them connected with people that can support them there too.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on. Classroom communication. This is one that really I thought was extremely important, and I was so glad to see in the book. And I loved how you structured it, Emma. That was, I could almost envision like having a calendar. Okay, I need to check in with these group of kiddos today, these group of kiddos tomorrow, and, basically have a strategy in place of how and when you're going to communicate and what it's going to look like. That really helped me. I figure, Sean, you probably have something in place for your teachers already, don't you?
And we use a lot of Schoology. We push out a daily bulletin. We do all those kind of things. But I think we're going to have to be more conscientious about doing some open meetings, some town halls. Come in, ask your questions, get them answered, things like that. That just because it's on paper, just because it's pushed out in Schoology, eventually those notifications just become white noise, especially with everything being digital. So we have to be more conscious about getting them in some manner where we can actually talk to them, where we can actually hear them and they know they're being heard.
I agree. I know we have the robocalls. Do you guys have robocalls over in the UK, Stuart?
Well, we do, but not for contacting parents, to be honest.
Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome then. We use it to contact parents.
That's a new one on me.
So how do you?
So I don't know. I don't know if you guys are the same, but our district, there you go, using US terms, Emma. Our district basically mandated what we had to do from a wellbeing perspective. So we have children who have special needs, for example. We have families that are vulnerable. And so we very quickly had to create an action plan as to who we were going to contact, frequency. And this was just all from a wellbeing perspective. Never mind, whether they're actually doing their work or not, because obviously we use Google Classroom, so we were able to check in with the children. But we actually saw a lot of parents not communicating. Just they shut down. One parent I know, just there was issues going at home, and obviously with everybody being in the house at the same time and not being able to go out, it caused a lot of stress. So for us, it was absolutely vital we made contact with those parents, and in some cases we literally had senior staff going around to their house because they wouldn't answer the phone, wouldn't respond to emails, and we were standing at the end of their drive talking to them about what was going on. So for us, it was more about a well-being perspective rather than actually, whether they're doing any work or not.
That's awesome. Any feedback, Emma? You're the expert. Tell us what works.
Gosh, I would actually not call myself an expert in parent communication. My first few years as a teacher, I worked at a school in a district with pretty limited parent interaction, just parents that didn't engage as much as I had hoped. Have much more parent involvement now, so I am starting to learn more and more about building relationships with parents. This is probably another one where I could go into so much more depth and detail, but a couple things that maybe I didn't even say in the book. One thing we did immediately when we went to 100% online learning is each teacher was sectioned off a group of students to be the primary contact for, like an advisor sort of role. And we contacted both the students and parents. And one of the things we did in that point, besides checking in with the basics, like, do you have food? Do you have reliable internet access to do work at home? Are you safe? Those kind of things. One of the things we asked was, what's the best method of communication for you? And I do say this in the book. There are a lot of parents who are much more responsive over text message than they are over email. Cannot get an email back, but will get a text message almost immediately. So Google Voice is one of my best friends. I have the Google Voice app on my phone. It is my work number, my school number, and I can text students and parents from that number. And it's not my own, so I kind of protecting my own number and privacy there. But that's been really helpful for me when contacting both students and parents. I have some students who I know, don't have an alarm, don't get up early, and I'm texting them right before class. I'm like, hey, I don't see you. Where are you? Come on, let's get to class. So it hasn't always been the cleanest, prettiest, packaged system for communicating, but I will reiterate something I've heard parents say when it comes to all school communication about what work is doing when, better to package that as much as possible, have fewer communications rather than more, because I know we're all really overwhelmed right now. Keep it consistent, clear, and all those good things. I know a lot of people probably in the chat box too have great systems for communicating, and that would be.
Yeah, I know that was one big complaint from parents in the spring from our district. They're like, I'm getting an email from every teacher, and I have 4 kids. If you figure each of the kids has 3 or 4 teachers, how many emails is that parent getting? And I can't help them. If I was in that situation, I would be very overwhelmed too. So the idea of pulling those together, that's a really good thought. So let's.
Yeah, I saw my sister's school. She's on a school board, and her school, they just, for the 4th grade, it was just a Google slideshow, and it was just overall here's all your stuff for 4th grade, and then they would kind of click into the class, and so all the links stayed the same, and the teachers were just changing what was on the live documents that the parents were linking to. I thought that was great because everything was there for all of fourth grade, for all of fifth grade. The parents could go in that far, and then the students login would actually get them into the whole class, into the details of the class too. So I thought that was a really good approach using slides.
Yeah. All right, so let's finish up that first week, and then we'll see if there's any questions from the audience. So this is where we started getting down to district expectations. We've kind of already covered a little bit of that. Does anybody have any extra things to throw in about this one? Advantages and disadvantages, or planning to provide for both situations?
I would just say I really love the hybrid model that I teach in traditionally because it blends synchronous and asynchronous learning. I think it's something that we might be able to carry over back into I heard someone call it legacy education or traditional kind of brick and mortar education, but I think it meets needs of students in both ways. So I love synchronous learning because we're connecting and we're communicating, and we're building community together. And I love asynchronous learning because it gives students agency. It gives them time to think and be creative, and kind of a stress-free environment to direct their own learning. I did asynchronous learning when I was like a full-time classroom teacher. I called it a student-directed learning days. And so they knew that there was always going to be 2 to 3 days a week where they would come to class and they would just access their own learning. They got to sit wherever they like. They worked with whoever they wanted to. And they really appreciated that. So I love the combination of both.
All right, any questions that we have coming up? Anything that you guys have seen? Unfortunately, when I share my screen, I don't see what's on because I haven't mastered the double monitor yet. Anything we need to hit, Dana? For teachers who are full distance, what advice would you give for what a typical day will look like?
I would start with make sure each day has a little different to it, and I think Emma addressed in the book having that mix between the synchronous and asynchronous. A lot of our teachers, when we went full online, we were doing a full schedule, 7:45 till 2:20. Every kid was in every class. We took an hour for lunch. It was exhausting. Like, you have got to build in some asynchronous, or you are going to put yourself right over an edge. Like, it's way too difficult. So if it's a synchronous approach, you've got to build in some asynchronous there. That's the first thing I would give. As far as a typical day, I can let somebody else kind of handle that part of it.
Yeah,
Can I just? Oh, sorry, Eva.
Oh, go ahead.
No, can I just ask though, because from our perspective, it was when we were doing full distance learning, obviously we had our own families and children to take care of. So for us, it was always a well-being perspective for staff as well. So not doing everything synchronous was our MO, simply because, as Sean said, it was so demanding on staff. Never mind, they were trying to homeschool with their children and so on. And so for us, there was never that pressure to do every lesson online. I know some schools have done. It was very much whatever model best suits you, because I'm the IT lead, so I had to deal with 1,000 different emails to do with technical issues from staff and parents. But yeah, our focus was all about the well-being of staff first, when it came to us planning how we were going to do things.
I love that. And again, going back to let your teachers be the experts in their classroom and of their lives in a pandemic. It's like, give your teachers the grace to do whatever works with them in their lives and their schedules. And I was lucky to be in a school and district that really did that for our teachers, right? They allowed us to teach synchronously if we were able to, or asynchronously entirely if that's what we could manage. So I definitely agree with that. I would just add to Dana's question about like what a typical day looks like for me. So if I am teaching synchronously that day, I used to go to the school building in the classroom, or I'll spend several hours that day teaching over Google Meet. If it's an asynchronous day, I typically tend to either do just like 10-minute community check-ins with my students, which are totally optional. They can come online and just say hello and check in with their classmates and with me. Or I'll have office hours that day. So a period of time where I'm working on my computer, but I'm on Google Meet. And if a student needs to pop in just for a little emotional time or for some tutoring or help with work, they have the option to do that as well. So my days are really different, just kind of depending on what the schedule is that day. But it's typically one of those two things.
So this is, well, that one there that Pilly brought up, but I was also looking at the one below it where she talks about the problem with students not in school is the fact that kids aren't used to working on their own. Thoughts and ideas on that one?
Yeah. That is one of the things that I hope. I have a tweet pinned to my profile talking about, you never let a good, I forget how I should really memorize it. I've only been looking at it every day. But never let something like this go to waste, right? Never let this just go aside. We need, I think this is a big change to drive more of that student-centered learning and to teach kids how to do this. Because I agree, we have a lot of kids, same situation at our school. It's kind of like, I'm going to listen. My teacher is going to give me all the information instead of them owning that information, learning it. I saw somebody earlier talking about inquiry. I can't wait to do more inquiry. I get to teach one class first semester this year, and I'm really excited because there's going to be a whole lot of inquiry going on in that class, letting them own it. And I think that's a big part of this. And that you get that'll help with your asynchronous approach too. That'll take the teacher from trying to do too much all the time and getting ourselves, like Stuart was talking about, and worrying about our own emotional well-being, being able to do that too.
Thoughts, Stuart? What do you think?
Yeah, we had a number of parents who just couldn't cope. They just could not support their children because their children just weren't able to do things on their own. I mean, I teach 9 to 11-year-olds, and they're generally independent, but the younger children in particular found it really challenging to work independently, and their parents were trying to support them as well. And obviously some parents, 3 or 4 children, in one case 6, and they found it very, very challenging to try and support their children. And actually my innovator project is all based on the difference between what parents have learned at school, which is probably 20 years ago, and what we're teaching now. So they're also trying to support their kids with strategies and methods that they're just not familiar with. So children who can't cope working on their own, they need parental help, but actually the parents aren't necessarily able to give it for lots of different reasons. That's assuming that they're not working from home full time as well, because I know a few of our parents just couldn't support their children at all.
Yeah, I'm hoping that.
And then I saw, yes, exactly. You're reading my mind. The question was, besides relying on collaborating with parents, what could be another way to provide students with learning opportunities who do not have internet access? And I know, unfortunately, in my building, that was running packets of worksheets, stapling them together, and having parents pick them up. What are your guys' ideas?
Yeah, I think it depends on, do they have devices at all? Can you, how many USB drives do we all have sitting around school somewhere that we don't ever touch anymore, right? Can we repurpose those? Can we put videos on those that we could send home with kids? Like, here are the videos that we're watching on YouTube and doing these other things. Like the kids could see their teachers, they could see things like that. If they have a device, you know, that would work with. That'd be one thing we can do, besides the packets.
Yeah, aside from the other things I mentioned earlier, like offline documents, if devices are the issue, packets work, right? Like in a dire need situation, packets work. A lot of people have phones. You know, even if you don't have a laptop device or an iPad, a lot of people have phones. So you might consider having students do something that is phone friendly. I was having a conversation with somebody on Twitter recently, and we were talking about different methods for students who are mostly using a phone. Multiple choice is good on a phone. Any video or audio recording is a lot easier on a phone. And even just doing work that you can take a picture of and submit that as your work. So can you sketch note? Can you mind map? Can you draw or write and take a picture of that and upload it with a phone?
Well, with the new advances that Flipgrid rolled out today, that might open a whole nother ball game for a lot of people. So looking through the synchronous questions, and I want to make sure we have time to kind of preview the asynchronous section. The one that kept coming back to me was, as accomplished educators, we know that students benefit both academically and socially from working in groups. How are we going to plan on collective collaboration that is real during these synchronous virtual situations? And what are your ideas? And I mean, I know Google Meet says eventually we will have groups, and Zoom does have the push out groups, but until then, how do we hack that?
I have done so much group work so successfully online. I think this is, you know, where we talk about device and access, I get a little discouraged, but I feel totally encouraged by connecting and working together as groups. I think there is no reason why we cannot collaborate in a virtual or hybrid environment. All EdTech tools are built for this exact purpose, right? We used to be sitting in classrooms, like connecting, but there's no reason why we can't do it around the world. Your students can all be having asynchronous or synchronous discussions on Flipgrid. Sometimes I have students post to Flipgrid within a day or a week, or sometimes we're live on Meet and I say, everybody go to Flipgrid. We're gonna have 20 to 30 minutes and we're all gonna have a discussion there right now. Same thing with Padlet, same thing with a Google Doc, same thing with Parlay. There's so many tools, and I mentioned a lot of them in the book. Students can be working together in the classroom, at home, all virtual. There's just so much good stuff. I know I see Stephanie in the chat box just wrote an article on this. There's tons of options here for sure. And she's posting some in the chat box for us.
Awesome. Gentlemen, do you have anything to throw in?
Sorry, I'll just say, I don't know about you guys, but I think we were introducing so many new tools to our children when we first went distance learning, you know, like Flipgrid and so on, that we had to hold back a little bit so we didn't overwhelm them. And we had to really narrow down which collaborative tools we were going to use. And, you know, obviously through Google Classroom, you can do it through Docs and so on. And I go back to Jamboard because Jamboard was my favorite collaborative stuff. But our kids were just like, wow, I can see you type at the same time, and you know, I can put little sticky notes. And for us, because we were just starting our G Suite journey just before lockdown, for us it was a real big upskilling of parents and staff and students as well. And I think for the future we're going to use a lot more. But for us, we had to limit it because some of our parents were complaining they just couldn't cope with different platforms. And we focused on Google Classroom. We used a bit of Flipgrid, but we just tried to keep it simple so that for the short term, children could learn how to use those tools before we moved on to some of the more exciting ones, shall we say.
Yeah, and Stephanie made a good point too. It's more about building those connections and making sure we maintain that community as opposed to the tool itself.
That,
So we are
that's,
about, I'm sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
That's going to be a really big part of this. In the spring, everybody was scrambling. It was just triage. I mean, honestly,
Exactly.
it was triage. Right now, we've had a lot of time to reflect. How do we do this better? And the one thing that that we're going to be really pushing with our teachers is that horizontal approach, is that communication, collaborative approach. Because in the spring, it was, here's your assignment, download it. Yeah, I'll be on screen explaining it, but then you're going to do it and you're going to upload it back to me. And everybody was kind of on their own. And we just built these. We've worked so hard to get everybody out of their silos, and then we pushed everybody back into a silo. And it's like, we've got to get them out of it. So I know, Emma, in the book, I really like I've seen it somewhere else too before, the idea of the Google Meets, and having 5 or 6 of them set up, ready to go, kids' names in them. They just click on a box that takes them to that Google Meet, and there's your groups. Because even if groups comes out, when it comes out in Meet, you have to have enterprise. So not all these schools are going to have it. So even when it comes out, I believe we're paying for it if you want it. So
Yeah,
I like that solution a lot.
I plan to just keep linking into a Google Doc because, like you said, we're not going to have enterprise. So you can definitely hack together a way to do Google Groups. And what I love about Stephanie's comment that's on the screen right here is that last one: how do we provide opportunities for a voice? Because a lot of what teachers have said to me is like, how do I teach online for an hour? I'm like, you don't
No,
lecture the whole
right.
time. You send students into groups, you have them talk with each other, you have them do activities, you're still teaching. And I think for some of us, this whole remote environment has thrown everybody off, and we've forgotten everything we know about teaching. It was like, no, go back to what you know, and we can still do these things. We just need to learn the tools. And I definitely agree with what Stuart said. Sometimes I get ahead of myself because my students are used to all these tools that I say, but I definitely agree. Pick one, learn that, master that, then introduce another one, because overwhelm is the last thing you want to put on your students or teachers right now.
Well, and I think we're going to have to overcome the idea, and Stuart, I'm assuming the UK is in the same situation. What we experienced in the spring was emergency. Like Sean said, triage. It was emergency teaching. Nobody, I didn't have any forewarning. I went to spring break, and then during the middle of the spring break, they said, "You're not coming back." We have to get people aware that that's what we go into this fall is going to be very different. So not only the parents, but also the kids and the teachers and the mindset that it's going to be different.
Yeah, I think in the UK, I think the parental expectations is different. So they were like so pleased with what we offered, for this term that we've just finished. And, they were very, very complimentary in terms of everything we've done for their children. But if we go into a second lockdown in September, they are going to expect much more from us. So we are going to do a lot more synchronous learning, a lot more live lessons. And, whereas I think they've been quite understanding so far, they are going to expect us to do more, because they were very aware that we were literally just firefighting. We were just trying to set things up. I don't know about you guys, but some of our staff can be as confident as anything in a classroom or in a hall doing a presentation, but they're absolutely terrified of being on screen. And there's issues with that. What about the children who don't want to show themselves? They don't want to communicate. They don't want to get involved. There's lots of new challenges, which I think we've not had to even think of before. And certainly starting back, we've got to have plans for everything.
Yeah, and on that note about the kids not wanting to be on screen, we got to get over that as teachers, and it's about them being engaged. So as long as I'm getting information back from that student in some way, shape, or form, that they're following, that they're getting it, that they're asking questions, I don't need to see that kid on screen. I need to know that that student is getting it, is understanding what's going on. So that's a huge part as you go to online learning. Just take it down a notch, because you know what? these kids all know how to make a GIF or a GIF. I don't want to discriminate, but and put it up there as a virtual background in Zoom, and that kid's gone. That kid ain't even there. So just because you can see them doesn't mean a thing. You know, what are they doing? What do they get? What do they understand? That we gotta communicate better.
Absolutely.
So just to preview the asynchronous questions, and I actually have them scheduled to pop out on Twitter in about 10 minutes. But the one section, and I'm going to cheat, I'm going to address the one that really kind of hit home for me, was that very last segment where you had the quote from Kate Stevens with that question: is the work you are posting content rich and educationally valuable for your students? Or are you posting it simply because you feel like you need to have something for the students to do that day? And it really hit home with me because that's exactly what we did in the spring, because that's pretty much the message we were given. Make sure your kids have something to do. And I just kind of wanted personally to get your feedback on that and to see what everybody else had to say with it.
First of all, Kate Stevens is brilliant, and we should have her do a whole webinar or panel on our global GEG. She's one of my mentors at the school. I think in addition to what she said, and she's not saying give the students nothing, right? She's saying do more student-led inquiry, let the students drive some of that learning. And it does come with some teaching, right? You don't just say drive your own learning or inquire, right? Because when students hear that, they're gonna be like, okay. And then they'll probably go play Minecraft or whatever students want to do. So she does kind of pre-teach at the beginning of the year. Here's how you might drive your own learning. Here's how you ask questions. Here's how you use resources. Here's how you kind of drive your own learning experience. And so she likes to give her students a lot more choice, particularly when she finds herself in that position of, am I just making what is essentially busy work? And I think a lot of teachers probably share in that feeling that you had, Laura, where you're like, I just need something for them to do. And so asking yourself that question, I think, is really powerful. And when the answer is yes, this is kind of busy work, maybe not. Who is it benefiting, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're working harder, the students are working harder, and to what end?
Thoughts, gentlemen?
Well, I'll just say what's been really apparent to us is that there's a big difference between online teaching and online learning. And so, what we have to fine tune now is that online learning. It's not just a matter of putting something on Google Classroom to keep them occupied. It's got to be hitting, a key objective, or you've got to really think about the structure of your lesson, because certainly here in the UK, the government have thrown a lot of money at something called Oak Academy, which is basically a resource tool online, but it's not actually online learning. It's just resources for them to use. And if this is going to prolong, because I was basically working from home for 17 weeks, and in those 17 weeks, if you look back at it, you go, right, okay, how much of that was actually online learning as opposed to online teaching? And I think if we go through this again, we're going to have to fine tune that much more, because there's some very high proponents of online learning in the UK, and they're just basically saying, okay, you're throwing money at all these things, but you're not actually addressing the key issue. And the key issue is the quality of that online learning. It's not just about just keeping them busy.
Exactly. Sean, thoughts?
I just love that you're talking about, Stuart's talking about how things are more like resources in a lot of cases, and not just pushing that stuff out. It's going to be about engagement and how we're engaging and how do we know they're engaged. And by the way, like, I'm watching Marilyn McAllister's comments here, and I think I just found like my best friend out there, because she was talking inquiry and question formulation technique, and yeah, we could talk for hours. So I'm loving those questions there. Really engaging stuff.
Yeah. So anything, the last thing I kind of wanted to throw out was what's been in the news a lot with what we're experiencing now at the K through 12 level, how that is impacting higher education. You know, you hear on the news here, and I'm imagining you do over there, Stuart, as well. How is someplace like an Ivy League school justifying their tuition rates and then having everybody learn online? You know, at some point that's going to impact the higher education level as well. How much of all of this is going to completely flip education on its head as we go forward? Thoughts?
I think we're having to redefine what education is, and we're having to look it right in the face. And there are a lot of people who are right now coming out and saying education is babysitting. And I think we need to push back against that and say the value of education is education, and it can be delivered in multiple formats. Like we've been saying this past spring, it's been very much triage and emergency based, but I think they're good, important questions we need to start asking.
Yeah,
Are you hearing that over there, Stuart?
Yeah, I think, my biggest fear, and this has been a cynical British person because we don't do things that are revolutionary. My biggest fear is that we will go back to how it's always been. Some of our local high schools have been absolutely appalling in what they've offered to their students. I've got a 16-year-old, and she was due to do her exams in the summer, and obviously they were cancelled, and they basically abandoned those children because they just haven't seen them as a priority. And for me, I'm all about tech to do enhance children's learning. So I just want this to be a revolution. I want us to not go back to certain ways of doing things. And we all work with staff who do it a certain way because they've always done it that way. But credit to our staff, we've really upskilled in such a short period of time. And I've told them now, we cannot go backwards. What we've been doing online, we're going to embed this into our classroom because it works. Ultimately, the enhancing of children's learning is the number one thing. And technology can do that. And we cannot go back to how it used to be. I will cry if we do.
Amen. Amen. We got to go. We got to move. Like, there's so many great things we can do. And right now, planning, to go that, maybe in the background, but working on it, seeing what works, bringing these teachers in after what they've experienced. The people like Emma's like, yeah, I'm going, like, I'm changing it, I'm doing it, I'm doing inquiry. I've never done all inquiry in my class. I'm going to do that. We need to reflect on that. We need to take that back from the teachers and build something better, because we can build. Education's going to change. It has to change. If we go back, we're doomed. I mean,
we're not going back.
No.
And identify those teachers who are excited and empower them.
Right. Make them the leaders in your building.
Yeah.
Right. I think his name is Buddy Berry in Kentucky, and I know he talks about his penguins and his polar bears in his building, and he wants those penguins to grow, and he doesn't want the grumpy polar bears like ruining everything and destroying the penguins. It's an amazing story. I love Buddy, but great stuff. Yeah, going forward, empowering those teachers.
We have to learn to teach outside the lines. That's my new theory. We have to learn to teach outside the lines.
Yeah.
Well, I want to tell everybody thank you so much. I've kept Stuart up way too early and some other people up way too late. I want to remind everybody that we are going to be on Twitter on Sunday at 6:30 Central. You can find us at #HybridTeacherPD. And would you guys like to add anything before we sign off and tell everybody good night?
Just a big thank you to organizing, Laura. It's been fantastic, you starting this conversation. It's been a pleasure to meet you, Stuart and Sean. I have a couple trainings and resources that are coming up. I'll post those in the comment section, but otherwise it's been a really lovely chat. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say one thing? Sorry. I'm seeing, obviously on Twitter and through the Global GEG group, I'm seeing a lot of what's going on in the US right now, and it seems that's in some areas you're taking a bit of a teacher bashing from the public, because of course you just sit around and do nothing at home during distance learning. And we had that when we were first looking at reopening schools, and I just want to say that obviously people have their opinions, but I think you're all doing a great job, and you will still be professionals, and you will adapt and learn, and whatever situation you go back to in the next few weeks, you'll do a great job doing it. So yeah, don't let the haters get you down.
Thank you. Yeah, and Sunday we'll see if I make it. It's my birthday, so I might be on my patio, not in a shape to talk online.
It'll all be there all week as always. We'll look for your feedback. We appreciate it. Everybody join us on Sunday, 6:30 Central Time, #HybridTeacherPD. Have a good night.
Cheers,
Thanks,
guys.
Bye.
Bye.